Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you all for being here tonight on this day that only happens once every 4 years.
Recording in progress.
When I said earlier, good thing we have an extra day this month, otherwise we wouldn't have had this meeting. Here we go. We have actually two items on the agenda tonight. One is, I think, the reason why you all are here, which is the comprehensive permit application that we will be starting off tonight. And once we'll do that first. Once that hearing is completed, we'll take a brief recess so that people who would like to leave can leave at that moment, and then the board will take up a very minor administrative petition that should not last very long, but it's an administrative issue. So tonight, as I said, first item on the agenda is Thoreau Residences LLC for a comprehensive permit under MGL Chapter 40B, paragraphs 2023 for a 216-unit multifamily development, which is a 13.08 acre portion of the real property known and numbered as 275 Forest Ridge Road, parcel number 2970-1-5. Excuse me?
Volume.
I hope that helps. Okay, excellent, thank you. It's my first time in this room, so I don't know exactly how this works. So let me tonight introduce the people here that are here with me tonight. To my right is Mr. Ravi Fahia. To my left is Elizabeth Dwyer-Leonard, and not here tonight, and I'm not sure he might still come, otherwise he will, I'm sure he will view this meeting on its recording, is Mr. Thomas Swain. Elizabeth Akehurst Moore is not here tonight either. She's on vacation, and she's actually going to leave. She will be leaving the board in a couple 3 months, so she will not be voting on this matter anyways. Then we also have in the room Joe Pesnola from Hancock Associates. He is the 40B consultant for the town. And on the far end is Kim Johnson from our planning department. Remotely, we have tonight Elizabeth Hughes, our town planner, who is on vacation but still listening in, I think. And also Christina Marshall is remote, and she's our town council. So they'll be listening in and chiming in as needed. So this schedule, where we are in this project, we opened a short while ago. We're not exactly certain of the date, but we opened the hearing for this project just because we had to by statute, and at that point in time, the 180-day time clock started for us to end the public hearing. After the 180 days of public hearing time, we have 40 days to write and file a decision. So that's sort of the time frame that we are working under, and so we're a little bit under the gun because 180 days that has already started, that's over before you know it. After tonight, there will be a second hearing. We will sometime tonight, we need to schedule a site visit. I would like to schedule a site visit, which will be in the next few weeks. And then we will have a follow-up hearing on Thursday, April the 4th, also in this room. And then, as I said, our 180 days will be up on July 16th. Tonight, the way this is going to sort of run tonight is that the applicant will do their presentation. Then there's going to be some questions from the board, and then there is some questions from, hopefully, and comments from the public here as well as remotely. So, and I'll try to monitor where I want to go, whether I'll take questions from here first and then remote, or whether I mix and match that a bit. But there's going to be ample time for everybody to comment tonight. And there's also already quite a few, if you haven't been on the website for this project yet, there's quite a few comments that have already come in to the board about this project, and they've all been uploaded to the website, so you can go there and review them. And there it is, fashionably late, is Tom Swain. We now have a quorum plus, so that's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
That's a good thing. Excellent. So, Tom, I just did the introduction, and so you didn't miss much, and we're just about at the time, the period where I think I'm going to hand it over to the applicant so that they can start their presentation. Go ahead. Good to see you, Tom. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Do you guys hear me all right? Is this okay? Cool. Okay, well, evening, everyone, and thank you all for being here. We appreciate the opportunity to get to share our project with you all, and we look forward to working with the board over the coming months on our project. So real quick before diving into the agenda, I'll just introduce myself real quick. My name is JB Goff. I'm the co-founder of the Pinebrook Group, who's the applicant for this project. My co-founder is Maliki Burke right here, and we have our development team in the room as well, which I'll introduce later. Okay, so just real quick before diving in, just the agenda that we've outlined for our presentation. So I will give a quick overview of the Pinebrook Group, just who we are, what we do, and then talk a little bit about our project team that we've assembled here. Then I'll turn it over to Maliki. He'll talk about the location, give a brief project overview. And then, as I mentioned, we have our development team here in the room that'll talk about some of the specifics around the civil work, architectural work, landscape, traffic, and those items. And then at the end, we'll open it up for discussion and questions. So just diving in, just a quick background on our group. So the Pinebrook Group actually began as a conversation between Maliki and myself at a Red Sox game a handful of years ago. Believe it or not, Maliki and I have known each other since we were 9 years old. We went to elementary school together. We grew up on the North Shore here. And so I was in 4th grade at an elementary school in Beverly. Maliki toured one day, and I was assigned as his guide. And we've been friends ever since. So basically, you can say that we've been lifelong friends at this stage. And a couple days after that Red Sox game, we launched the Pinebrook Group. And our core focus is we're a private investment company that looks at opportunities in the real estate industry and also the sports industry. So that's our main focus here. We've since carved out a division of our company that focuses on multi-sport health clubs, such as the Thoreau Club, which we'll talk about today. So you can see here a few pictures of those projects, but that is our main focus. And then a bit of a background on how the purchase and the deal came about. So we acquired the Thoreau Club in May of 2022. We partnered with the CEO at the time. His name is Keith Callahan, who I'm sure many of you know. So we partnered with Keith back then. I actually met Keith way long ago. I was probably 8 or 9 years old, growing up at a tennis academy, training at a tennis academy at his old club in Manchester, Massachusetts. So I've known Keith forever. And so he approached us with the opportunity to acquire the club here. He was currently working with the Pulis family. I'm sure many of you know Todd Pulis. His father founded the club back in 1951. So it's really a generational health club here in the community. And so we were fortunate enough to acquire that club with Keith. So we've partnered with him, and it's been great working with his staff and his team And we're really looking forward to continuing the operations of the club into the future. So we're excited about this opportunity. And so I will turn it over. Actually, I think we have our project team page on the next page here. So as I mentioned before, we're the applicant, we're the Pine Brook Group. I will note we are also working with a multi-billion-dollar national developer, and we're looking forward to bringing them into future discussions here in the coming weeks. But on the page here is the development team that we've assembled. So we have our architectural firm, TAT, civil engineering with Allen & Major, landscape with Copley Wolf, traffic with MDM. Our legal counsel is Nutter, and we're also working with on-site engineering on the wastewater treatment, permitting, and design. So I will note that collectively, this team has accomplished countless multifamily development projects. They're responsible for thousands and thousands of multifamily units across the state. They're really a top-tier group of team members, and we're really fortunate to be working with them. And we look forward to having them share their thoughts and visions on our project here tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to my co-founder, Malachi, and he'll talk a little bit about the site and the location.
Hi, everyone. My name is Malachi Burke. As JB mentioned, I'm the co-founder and a managing partner at the Pine Brook Group. I just want to echo his sentiments. We're really grateful to be here presenting this project in front of you. I mentioned to Kim when I walked in, I was actually a tour guide at the Massachusetts State House growing up from 8th grade through the end of high school. So I really appreciate being in historic buildings like this. It's very cool to present here. So as you can see here, this is the location of the project where the blue star is on this map. And this kind of shows you the immediate surroundings around the project. So just below this site is, of course, the Thoreau Club, which is the tennis club that JB and I own and will continue to operate for many years to come. The other side of the fence of our employee parking lot is actually the Prescott, which is an already successful 350-unit 40B project from years ago. We are at the end of Forest Ridge Road, so you can see us kind of in our surroundings there. It abuts Main Street right off of Forest Ridge Road, and then across Main Street is the Stop and Shop anchored retail center, the Powder Mill Plaza. So, great location for a project like this. And on the next slide, we show kind of where this project is located in the greater West Concord area. So you can see again the star in the bottom left-hand corner. That's the location of our site. Again, just off of Main Street. It's about a 5-minute drive to downtown West Concord and the commuter rail station. And then just a bit beyond that is, of course, Route 2 for main access throughout the rest of Concord and beyond. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the project details here. So this site is about a 13.1 acre portion of the land that's operated by the Thoreau Club. Again, it's about a 5-minute drive to downtown West Concord. There will be 216 apartments going on this site, and it'll be split across 3 story buildings. There will be 406 surface level parking spaces with a very healthy 1.88 parking ratio. There'll be a full amenity package, indoor, outdoor amenities, and of course we're going to be right next to the Thoreau Club, which is already effectively a community asset. And again, 25% of the units will be designated as affordable, and that's designated based on those earning up to 80% of the area median income, or the AMI. And all 216 units will count towards Concord's SHI, the Subsidized Housing Inventory. And just below, you can kind of see a breakdown of the different unit types, where they will be in the 3 different buildings, buildings A, B, and C, and the total number of units and square feet. So from here, I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful civil engineer, Tim Williams, and he's going to take you through some of the civil engineering plans.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, Tim Williams with Allen & Major Associates. And I'll go through the civil side of this. I'll be brief because I understand we're going to have subsequent meetings, and I know there's a lot of people behind me. So I'm going to point to the screen. I know the board may not be able to see it, but hopefully it will show up on the projection. So as previously discussed, the project consists of we're going to subdivide this lot. It's a 33-acre parcel at the end of Forest Ridge Road. The land owned by Thoreau Real Estate LLC. Again, the address is 275 Forest Ridge Road. The Thoreau Club will continue to operate on the southern side, which is essentially 20 acres of land. and the remaining 13 acres of land will consist of the 216-unit multifamily development. This future development parcel, again, is situated between the Thoreau Club and the 2 over 55 planned residential communities of Black Birch Lane and Sweet Birch Lane. To the north is the 46-acre Starmont Superfund site, which is not a direct abutter, but the town of Concord owns land on the essentially northwest and south and northeast side of the parcel. So, next slide. Allen Major performed a full topographic survey reflecting all the existing buildings, structures, driveways, parking areas, utilities, and the closed drainage system which currently exists on site. The 13-acre development, which essentially runs right down through here, has frontage on Forest Ridge Road, consists of a day camp with several out-parcel buildings, a large open play field, 2 outdoor swimming pools, walking trails, and a wastewater treatment facility, which currently services the Thoreau Club. The topography across this 13 acres consists of elevations from 200, which there are 3 or 4 large mounds, which are again at elevation 200, and the lower elevations are essentially at between elevation 165 and 170. So there is some topographical relief across that 13-acre parcel. There are no wetlands on the site that have been identified. As well, there are no state-listed rare wetland wildlife, and the parcel is outside any areas of critical environmental concern. The parcel is, however, bisected by the Groundwater Conservation District zone line, which shows up clear on another slide, and I'll point that out at that time, and that would be considered a Mass DEP Zone 2 area. Next slide, please. So again, as previously noted, the parcel is going to be subdivided into 2 lots. And what we're doing is we're keeping the same nomenclature. So this parcel, Forest Ridge Road, has gone through numerous subdivisions over the years. Forest Ridge Road actually used to extend down to here, was cut back. The roadway was turned into an easement. So we gain our frontage off of the existing cul-de-sac. Lot F, we're calling this one Lot 5F1, and this is Lot 5F2. So 5F1, again, 13 acres. It's going to get our 50 feet of frontage as required by the bylaw off of the cul-de-sac on Forest Ridge, and the Thoreau Club, which will be roughly 20 acres, will gain its frontage on the same parcel. So that's about 75 feet. So collectively, there's about 125 feet of frontage there. 50 is required. We're going to take 50, and 75 will be left. And again, the Groundwater Conservation District bisects through both parcels. And because Lot 5F2 abuts residential A district, there's a 100-foot landscape buffer associated with that. Next slide, please. So this is the layout plan. A little difficult to see, I apologize. So as reflected on the submittal plans, it's going to be, the development is essentially going to consist of 3 buildings, 3-story buildings. Building A is 96,000 square feet with a building footprint of about 33,500 square feet. Building B is a 67,000 square foot building, 3 stories with a footprint of about 22,500 square feet. And building C, it's a 78,000 square foot building with a footprint of about 26,000 square feet. And again, that's a 3-story building. The proposed parking is all going to be done on the surface, surrounding the structures. So we've wrapped each of the buildings around with parking, and then there's a road that bisects both. There's a total of 407 total parking spaces, which include 12 accessible spaces. And as Malachi indicated, it's a ratio of 1.88 per unit. The site will access the site via a site driveway. Driveway is designed as a boulevard. So there's 2 12-foot lanes, one 12-foot lane in, one 12-foot lane out with an 8-foot wide landscaped median. And then we can talk further about the landscape treatment that's going to be, but the idea is to get... So where I left off, I was talking about the site driveway being a boulevard, two 12-foot lanes, 12-foot in, 12-foot out, 8-foot wide, center median, which we think fits very well in with the design elements of the building. We'll also incorporate full sidewalks, so all the buildings are interconnected by a sidewalk as well. The sidewalk does extend out to Forest Ridge Road and connects to that expansive sidewalk system, which again leads out to Main Street. So the proposed development conforms with the zoning bylaws for the underlying zoning district outside of the following, which is lot coverage and floor area ratio, and I believe a waiver request memo was submitted as part of the application. The Thoreau Club will remain on lot 5F2. Per the zoning, the existing building uses require parking of 288 spaces. Currently, the existing parking spaces, which aren't going to be impacted by the proposed development, have the ability for 310 spaces, of which 10 of them are accessible. So there's a number of parking spots down along the front, as well. There's a satellite lot out here that constitute those 310 spaces. With the subdivision of the land, the Thoreau Club will remain in conformance with the zoning bylaws for the limited industrial park 2 zoning district outside of the existing nonconformities, which include the side yard abutting a residential district. As I pointed out earlier, there's a 100-foot buffer. The Thoreau Club is actually within that. The floor area ratio, and the parking setbacks. Next slide, please. So in the submittal package, we included and documented the full zoning table, outlining dimensional requirements for the underlying zoning district, and included detailed parking tables demonstrating what's required and what's proposed for the proposed developments and the existing Thoreau Club. All right, this one might show up a little bit better. This is our stormwater management plan, our grading and drainage plan. So we've prepared a full stormwater management report, which was included in the submission, which outlines the conformance with the Concord stormwater regulations. The Concord stormwater regulations require the project to meet the performance standards of the Massachusetts stormwater management policy, which are implemented as part of the overall stormwater management plan for the project. The existing parking lots, which are not being modified, contain a closed drainage system which discharges to an infiltration basin kind of right at the corner of the site driveway and Forest Ridge Road. We will be modifying that basin as part of the access to the residential development, but it will still conform with the stormwater management standards. The proposed development parcel in its existing conditions has no closed drainage system. The majority of the stormwater discharges via sheet flow up into the corners. Essentially, there's 2 study points up on the northwest side of the site. And again, it flows unmitigated via sheet flow. We understand that the soils are very good out here, so we use conservative numbers in our drainage report. The stormwater management plan itself incorporates structural and non-structural best management practices to provide for quality and quantity as part of the design. This includes deep sump-hooded catch basins, underground and above-ground stormwater infiltration systems with pre-treatment via water quality inlets. So we have our full closed drainage system that picks up both the site driveway and the proposed parking lots and the building's roofs themselves, and those are routed to underground infiltration systems, which are located within the drive aisles. And then we've also incorporated infiltration basins, which are located on the east and the northern side of the site, again, discharging back to the points where stormwater currently drains to, but at a quantity less than what happens today. And again, the submitted stormwater report shows by means of narrative calculations and exhibits that there's no increase in the peak rate of runoff from the site for all those study points. Next slide. This is our utility plan. So the proposed development will be serviced by municipal water. on-site wastewater treatment plant for the septic, natural gas, underground electric, telephone, and cable. Now, the water, the gas, the underground electrical, and the telecommunications are all located within the cul-de-sac that's out there today. The intent is to bring those in via the site driveway, wrap the buildings with appropriate place hydrants for the water, as well as servicing the buildings for both domestic and fire protection. I'm not quite sure if we're going to be utilizing gas on this site, but we have the ability to bring gas in because it is available in Forest Ridge Road. And again, there's an electric vault, and then there's a telecommunications vault within Forest Ridge Road itself. The project will require a private wastewater treatment facility with the ability to treat upwards of 50,000 gallons per Title V flow. This will require permitting through the Mass DEP and require a BRP WP83, which is an application to prepare a hydrological evaluation. As well, once that's complete with the DEP, we'll move into filing the BRP WP79, which is an individual permit for groundwater discharge for the sewer treatment plant. As well, as I mentioned earlier, the existing wastewater treatment plant for the Thoreau Club is situated on the proposed development parcel, so that will be, we'll need to design a wastewater treatment facility to handle that building as well. So there's 2 of those involved. And that's a process that'll be handled via the DEP as we move forward through the project. So that's a quick and dirty overview of the civil aspect of it. With that, I'll turn it over to TAT.
Thank you, Tim. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jincy George, Senior Designer at the architectural team, and I'm glad to present to you our proposed design for Thoreau Residences at Concord. We are looking at the site plan on the screen right now, and it shows us the overall layout of the 3 buildings with the courtyards. I would like to highlight the main driveway that stems from the Forest Ridge Road. So that becomes the primary access leading to the site. And this leads to the main entrance of the building A, which you see at the C-shaped building as soon as you're entering into the site. What this allows is for formalizing the layout. It helps us to organize the layout around these large courtyard spaces, which is an inspiration from a typical New England inn. And that's one of the concepts that we have looked at in terms of designing this project. We want to treat this project as a large welcoming house or an inn in tandem with the characteristic of Concord. So in essence, overall, from the site plan, you can see that all the 3 buildings are organized around these large courtyards. It has a clear sense of arrival, which is accomplished by that driveway. And also, we are looking at maximizing the views for all the units and the spaces for the surrounding greens and also in towards the courtyard spaces. The other thing I would like to highlight on this slide is the parking layout itself. So we have been intentional in terms of providing the parking spaces near the residential units in order to cater to the diverse user groups that will be living here. So the proximity allows for comfortable and convenient parking spaces, and people can use the parking spaces and approach the units without having to park in one spot and walk across the site to access the units. Next slide, please. This is the ground floor plan of the buildings, and on this slide, I would like to highlight that all the programmatic spaces are designed to have close relationship with one another. So as you're approaching the building, you're welcomed by the amenity space that opens to the large courtyard beyond. So that becomes an extension of the amenity space, allowing to be used for large formal or informal gatherings. And like Maliki already mentioned, that we are very intentional in terms of making this residential development, providing indoor amenities as well as outdoor amenities that will really bring together this residential development more as a community space for all the users over here. Also, we are proposing one courtyard for the central courtyard for building A and a shared courtyard between building B and C, And although they function as individual courtyards, they are united both physically and visually, physically by means of the pedestrian connections, so they weave together to form a one continuous pedestrian ground. Next slide, please. This is the typical upper floor plans of the buildings. So we're looking at level 2 and 3 of the buildings. And on this plans, I would like to highlight that we are providing a diverse range of unit types, ranging from 1-bedroom units to 3-bedroom units. And this is also done to cater to the various user groups that will be living here. Next slide, please. So we will go through some key elevations of the project to understand the overarching architectural moves. We are looking at the front elevation of Building A. And on this slide, I would like to highlight that we have been looking at several precedents, the historical precedents throughout the city of Concord, the town of Concord, and been mindful in terms of taking the cues and taking cues from those much admired buildings that we have seen here, and to apply those architectural moves onto this building so we can see the slope roof, the broad pillars, shuttered windows, and the dormers with chimneys that gives that essential, that tradition of Concord that we very much admire. So you can see a clear central figure that creates this welcoming gesture of the main entrance. And the ground floor is provided with a continuous open porch, so creating a very welcoming gesture into the site. And there are these pedimented entrances and the book-ended pavilions that gives it a very domestic nature to the entire project. Next slide, please. So this is the secondary elevation, I would say. It's the front elevation of Building B, but we would call it the secondary elevation because I would like to highlight the hierarchy from the previous elevation that we saw. So although there is unity between the various facades throughout the design, there are subtle variations that creates this hierarchy from the main entrances, the main arrival elevation, to the secondary arrival elevations of the other buildings. But the overarching composition is the same. We will see a clear central figure with displaying wings on the either side, and the proportions achieved through cornices, through the addition of chimneys and dormers that gives it that domestic feel. Next slide, please. So this is the courtyard elevation of Building A. Here I would like to highlight that all the buildings are connected to these open spaces visually, because the residences are provided as a perimeter around these large courtyard spaces. Next slide. And this is the courtyard facade of Building B. And on this slide, we can see how the courtyard facade is treated slightly differently when compared to the other residential facades. So here we can see the double height portico that gives the presence of the building onto the courtyard, giving it a public front, but at the same time maintaining that overall character and feel of the project. Next slide, please. So this is a sectional elevation taken through Building A courtyard and going all the way through the courtyard between Building B and C. And here you can see the relationship of the two different courtyards that is connected together by this visual connection that we already saw in the floor plans, but also through pedestrian ways. So what it does is it gives a continuous fabric, a pedestrian realm for all the users in this project. Next slide. So this is one of our conceptual rendering, a 3D rendering of the main arrival view. We already saw this view in the elevation, but here we can have a better picture of what that's going to look like. And you can see we have taken cues from the historical buildings of Concord, and the main massing is conceived to be this welcoming large house or inn, like I mentioned. And it maintains this picturesque quality right at the arrival axis, the primary axis, as you're approaching the site. And the pavilions at the ends scales down the building. It adds proportions, it adds scales to the buildings, giving it a very nice domestic character that we are really working towards for this project. Next slide, please. This is the arrival view itself, but we are stepping back. We are seeing it from a little little distance. So here you can see those broad moves that we have been looking at in the past few slides. So to sum it up, I would say the formal expression of this project with the broad pillars, the shuttered windows, chimneys, and the dormer windows, it all works together to create this welcome and warm presence on the site that is in tandem with the tradition of Concord. And that's what we hope to achieve for this project. With that, I would conclude the architectural portion, and I'll hand it over to the landscape architect.
Thank you. And for the record, my name is Sean Sanger with Copley Wolf Design Group. We're excited to be out here and to talk to you guys tonight and kind of listen and hear as well as it relates to the feedback and the comments. So kind of taking a kind of a step back here with this first slide. Tim talked about the boulevard entry, which are kind of keyed as number one on the site plan here. Certainly envisioning that being a heavily treed canopy down the center, as well as tree canopy as well on the edges to start to bring those existing woodlands back in to really kind of have this all kind of stitched together, if you will, and kind of feel really seamless at the end of the day to kind of connect the edges once the construction on the project is built. So you see that nice kind of meandering drive in, the kind of that front area, that the entry really highlighted there. And then certainly you start to see, and hopefully this is easy to read within the color, the confines or the kind of the shapes, if you will, of those central courtyards. As we talked about building A, the one with the pool there on the left is a little bit more of the active courtyard as proposed, certainly tying those amenities in within the interior amenity package of the building along that front edge, along the, I guess, page lower left. So you kind of envision that expanding out. We're still working through the programming there, but certainly you could envision having outdoor grill stations, gathering spaces, outdoor movie nights. We are looking at kind of a pool edge there as well, and we've done some quick shadow studies to figure out the best location on site to be able to put that. But once again, that's really internal to the space. And then as just was described, within the courtyards for building C, and you'll see these bigger here in a second, a little bit more of a green passive courtyards, but still really promoting that pedestrian connectivity kind of down that green spine, if you will, and looking at ways to kind of further bridge that green across the parking there to really make that feel all interconnected within a very central amenity space. And then likewise, Tim talked about some of these stormwater elements as well, and you see that highlighted with number 9 kind of near the top of the slide, and then along the right-hand side. Once again, really starting to get that green infrastructure integrated into the overall site design as well. We want that to feel like a very green edge and very natural. So once again, not looking kind of in the old days, kind of the old detention ponds. This is really intended to be green, lush, and to be able to have that be integrated into the overall site design. Why don't we slide into the next? They're a little bit bigger. There we go. Yeah, so you start to see a little bit more detail, I think, within those courtyards. We are proposing for a dog park that you see at the top of the page in key item number 6. It's kind of in that beige tan tone. Let's see here as I kind of walk around the site from there. Number 9 is really a bit of the green infrastructure, as well as kind of running along that edge where we have number 11. But you do start to see a little bit more of the courtyards, the active spaces, those gathering moments, and then likewise, we're still kind of working through the designs here, but the opportunities for the residents on the units interior facing of the courtyards to be able to have walkout spaces into those green spaces. So you can imagine some of those green spaces could almost feel like front yards, even though they're communal, but they would have the ability to kind of spill out there. It could be a really nice amenity as well for the residents. And then likewise, you start to see that green spine right above number 5. We're looking at that kind of a meandering form, once again, to not feel really certainly very linear and very hard, but as it kind of a little bit more part of the naturally organic form of the space. So once again, kind of highlighting where we have number 7 at the top and the bottom of those courtyards is kind of where you have those entry moments out that we were just describing. Those could be some additional seating and gathering spots, a little bit smaller, a little more passive, and a little more, I guess I'll call them quieter, maybe a little more subdued, but you can still see fire pits or some small gathering spots out there. Certainly you're starting to have some sensitivity to those units that would be facing into those courtyards, but once again, some outside space that we all value, and I think people have learned to appreciate a lot more after COVID. So looking for those opportunities outside to create those gathering moments. And then likewise, the next slide is very similar to this, but we did want to talk about kind of the plant material. The trees that we're proposing, particularly around the edges, all of those are 3.5 inch caliber shade trees, looking to have those be large enough day one to start to have an impact. Looking for those over time to certainly help us shade the parking lots and diminish the heat island effect, as well as I always say we can't solve all the world's problems with one project, but if we do this project by project, certainly those trees, that tree canopy can certainly help us out with the heat island effects, carbon usage, as well as pollutants. So once again, just utilizing the plant material to help us as where we can, one bit at a time. We are looking at ornamental trees as well, which will give us some great spring color, flowering texture throughout the seasons. Those are really highlighted more around the pool and some of those interior courtyards where they're a little more engaging with the residents. And then likewise, really rich understory plant material, primarily around the base of the buildings, which will once again, where it's closer to people walking along the walks or along the pathways to start to get into that seasonal color as well. And that's where I'm really kind of looking more towards that texture of fragrance and color and seasonality there as well. And then kind of along our edges where we get beyond the parking lot to turn that into a little bit more of a naturalized meadow type of a character, a little less heavily manicured. We'll get away from the turf. Obviously that's very heavy water usage and fertilizer and pesticides and whatnot, very highly maintenance. So if we have the ability to let that be a little bit more of that meadow character, have that feel a little bit more kind of in context of the natural part of the area. Likewise, it's really good for habitat as well as pollinators. All of that certainly is a big bonus, and it starts to kind of blend those edges from the buildings out to the natural woodland edges. And I think the lawn area that I just talked about really is just focused within those central courtyards where people would have a chance to pitch a blanket, take their shoes off, walk out there, kind of hang out there. But then once again, kind of getting to that more natural area as we get to around the outer edges. And with that, I think I'll turn that over to traffic.
Good evening, board members. For the record, Robert Michaud, principal with MDM Transportation Consultants based in Marlborough, Massachusetts. Our firm has conducted a comprehensive traffic impact and access study following good industry practices and requirements and guidelines published by MassDOT. The study itself endeavors to understand the existing ground conditions, how much traffic is in the area, what safety characteristics exist for primary gateways serving the property, and projects that out to a future condition to understand the relative impact of the project and whether or not certain mitigative actions are required. Geographically, the board is aware of the site vicinity. The study looks at the primary gateway of Main Street at Forest Ridge Road, unsignalized intersection, as well as each of the intersecting ways between Main Street and this particular property, including the Camp Thoreau and Thoreau Club driveways. The next slide, please. The project, to put some context on this, is estimated to generate a relatively modest amount of traffic during peak hours and on a daily basis. We've estimated that using industry standard methods. They're well recognized in the industry. Our firm has experience with literally dozens of projects like this in the Commonwealth. So we have a very good understanding and empirical data basis that supports these numbers. What these show is that a project of 216 residential units is likely to generate on the order of about 1 vehicle trip per minute exiting the property over a typical peak hour in the morning. That's not all the traffic that would be generated, of course. These projects generate traffic over essentially a 3 to 4 hour window of time in the morning as people are going principally to workplaces and returning over a 2 to 3 and sometimes 4 hour period in the afternoon with similar volumes. So the 50 to 60 peak directional trips that a project like this is generating relative to the baseline or existing volumes in the area is relatively modest and manageable. The next slide, please. If we were to look at a snapshot in time to understand the relative impact of this project, that's what this diagram does. This is very much a stick figure representation of the roadways that serve the property, beginning at the top of this exhibit with Main Street, which runs east to west, Forest Ridge in the central portion, and the roundabout feature, which is central to where the site access will be provided. We know, for instance, that Main Street carries nearly 13,000 vehicles per day, and over the course of a typical peak hour, that same roadway carries approximately 1,000 two-way vehicle trips per hour. When we look at the additional traffic that this project would add, understanding that it would be principally generating to or from the east where primary employment centers are located, we would be adding on the order of about 60 vehicle trips to that 1,000 vehicle trip volume that currently exists. So while we can quantify the impact of a project like this, its relative increase in volume and hence impact is very modest. I will point out that Forest Ridge Road does carry just under 200 cars per hour. Many of those, the bulk of it, is actually associated with the Thoreau Club and that aspect of land use that's served by Forest Ridge Road. The survey information, the traffic counts that we conducted that led to this exhibit were actually conducted in October, which is an above-average traffic month, under conditions in which the club was operating under normal conditions or typical conditions. Next slide, please. The weekday evening peak hour period, another snapshot in time, which is what this represents, shows very similar numbers with very similar vehicle increases, but for a different period of the day. Again, modest impact. Next slide, please. From an operating perspective, we applied industry standard models to estimate how much delay a motorist would experience when they use the primary gateway, the intersection at Main Street at Forest Ridge Road, during particular hours of the day, the weekday morning and weekday evening peak hour in particular. What we've determined is that there are only very modest delays that are currently experienced by folks who are leaving Forest Ridge to either make a left or a right turn on Main Street. The delays associated with that, on average, are only about 20 seconds or so. It is not a capacity-impaired location. And even considering future growth independent of this project, which is more fully documented in the study, and the additional traffic from this project, those delays will not increase materially. They will remain on the order of less than 30 seconds on average for those same movements. So ample capacity, modest delay, very little change in how this intersection works with or without the project. Next slide, please. Finally, this isn't all about traffic. This is also about amenities and other features of the site that will encourage residents to remain on site or be accommodated by uses to which they can walk or bike or recreate. The site, of course, is proximate to the Thoreau Club, which is a benefit and in and of itself represents an amenity that is very walkable to the site. The site itself will also include, as the landscape architect had presented, other features and amenities like pool facilities, gathering areas, club rooms where residents can hold events within the property rather than having to travel off of the property, centralized mail facilities, etc. It will be served by a vast system and well-connected system of pedestrian infrastructure, not only connecting to amenities within the property, but to adjoining land uses like the Thoreau Club, like the Powder Mill Plaza along Main Street, which is very walkable from this site. Bicycle facilities will be provided within the property as well, as is customary to projects like this to encourage multimodal travel opportunities. And vehicle charging stations, which are increasingly becoming a standard item for these projects, will also be provided to accommodate that mode and type of transportation. So in summary, this project is a modest traffic generating project. There's ample capacity to accommodate it with very little change relative to current or existing conditions. And the amenities package will facilitate these alternative travel modes and opportunities. So with that, I will hand it back to the project team. Thank you.
We just want to thank you all again for coming and for having the opportunity to present here. We hope you see how thoughtful we've been in our analysis and subsequent application. Happy to answer any questions you might have, the board, public. I'll turn it back over to you, too.
Thank you so much. Let me just see what's coming in. Good long presentation that laid out the project pretty well. A request to you all is whether we can get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation so that we can post on the project website. And as far as posting on the website goes, the recording of this meeting will also be posted on the website, and just talk with Minuteman, and we will edit what we post on the website to take that unfortunate moment out of the posting. So again, my apologies. So questions from the board, questions, comments, etc. Anybody want to kick off, or you're never shy, Tom? So why don't you?
A question that is more of a legal question than it is the development itself. Is your lawyer here by chance?
Yes.
Welcome. Have you seen the letter that was written by Marcus Errico, et cetera?
Yes.
Representing the association? And if I read that letter correctly, and I'm asking this because I'm not sure I am clear on it, there is an association of a condominium association there, is that correct? And in that association is an affiliate of this developer, is that correct?
I'm not intimately, oh, by the way, I'm Jim Ward from Nutter. I'm not intimately familiar with the agreement, but as I understand it, it's it's not a condo association, it's a roadway maintenance association. And as part of that roadway association, the different members have percentage interests, and my client has 42% interest of it. So any maintenance costs, they pay 42%.
Well, as I read the letter, Thoreau Real Estate LLC, which is an affiliate of the group, is that correct? They're a member of that agreement. There's an agreement to that effect.
Correct.
And if I read that again, I'm asking whether you agree with this letter, it would suggest that the amended and restated Forest Ridge Agreement, which is recorded in the registry, et cetera, that the association members shall not injure, overload, misuse, or otherwise harm the road. Members may use the road for all purposes for which roads are used in the town of Concord, except as restricted by this agreement. And I'm curious whether your group thinks that the project they're proposing does not violate that provision, or are they taking the position, well, it's an affiliate, therefore we're not subject to it?
No, we're not violating the agreement. And for the purposes of the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing under a comprehensive permit, it's a private contract, so the board really has no say. I mean, it really can't weigh in on it. It's a private contract amongst the people in the association. I mean, to the extent they raise concerns about, like that anybody would raise in a hearing about traffic or pedestrian safety or what, those kinds of things are all open for discussion. But as far as our rights under the agreement, our rights are under the agreement. And the board doesn't sit in as a judge of it or anything else. That's just part of the agreement. But we believe.
I'm always anxious to give lawyers more work, and therefore, I would be interested in why you think that this board would have nothing to say about that language that I just referred to, that is an agreement to which your client, through an affiliate, is a participant.
Well, I just said, because it's a private agreement between parties that isn't something that's cognizable by the board. The board weighs zoning issues and the regulations under the HAC. And this is a private agreement. It's like if we had some other agreement with a neighbor or something like that, and they said we violated it because we cut a tree or something, the board can't say, oh, you cut a tree, we can weigh in on that. It's between us and them. They're free to sue us, whatever. And that plays out the way it plays out, but it's not cognizable by the board under 40B.
Except for the fact that we want to make sure that you have legal and
We
good
do have-
access to the site, and that's really what this boils down.
Well, the member said that we have the right to use the road for all reasons as a road's used in Concord, and we're doing that. I mean, it really goes to the maintenance of the road, who maintains it, that if it gets worn out, to the extent I think the letter raises concerns about wear and tear on the road and what the project will do to it. And I think we would be happy with a condition saying we'll do a pre-construction survey and then a post-construction survey, and we would obviously have to fix anything we break.
I'm glad you're already talking about conditions.
I'm generally a cynic, but
It's pretty optimistic.
I like to look forward to trying to work things out.
No, thank you.
Sure.
Anyway, and also just for your information, our town council is also on the line and was listening in, and we'll also double check with her and see
Sure.
what her opinion is.
Absolutely.
I have one other question.
Yeah, go ahead.
To the traffic gentleman, I believe you said that, and again, I'm asking whether I heard correctly, that the normal activity on Forest Ridge Road is approximately 200 per hour? Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, the highest level of traffic that we've recorded in October was just under 200 vehicle trips, two-way trips,
Is that during peak hour or during the
Peak.
normal day?
peak hour,
Okay.
right? So over the course of an entire day, and it's documented in more detail in the traffic report, there are just under 2,000 vehicles per day, two-way trips that are generated along Forest Ridge.
And of that 200 during the peak hour, what is your projection that the project would add to that 200?
Well, the peak hour numbers, as I've presented them, over the course of a peak hour would be just around 84 vehicle trips in the weekday evening peak hour, right? So that would get added to the just under 200 trips.
I'm sorry, either I didn't hear you, just tell me again, please.
Yes, so let's talk about weekday morning peak hour.
Okay,
The total number of trips that this project would generate or add to Forest Ridge, two-way trips, is 80.
80?
80,
Okay,
correct.
Thank
In
you.
the evening, that would be 84,
okay, thank you.
certainly.
Say, I have one more traffic question for you. I'm curious if you'll have a chance to study the impact in the summer, knowing that the Thoreau Club is busier when the outdoor pools are open and when the summer camp is in session?
Yeah, we do understand that Thoreau Club has an elevated level of activity during summer months. In the normal course of conducting a traffic report, we're obligated to look at average season conditions, but we could certainly consider what we would call a sensitivity analysis. We're working with a proponent who well understands the ebb and flow of demands at that club, so we'd be glad to conduct what we call a sensitivity analysis.
Great, and if you also could look at the day camp that's there, that's separate from the swimmer kind of drop-off?
Duly noted, thank you.
So, as I looked at the delay information, it seemed to me that you're talking about delays basically getting onto Main Street from Forest Ridge.
Correct.
Is there any analysis of, okay, I'm not worried about turning right on Main Street when I come out, I'm worried about hitting the choke points in West Concord when I'm trying to get to Route 2. Is there any understanding of impact to that?
It's a very good question. So in selecting which intersections or roadway segments to study, we have some guidance from industry standard as well as Mass DOT. The normal standard that's applied is that we would be obligated to study locations that experience more than a 5% change in volume or more than a 100 vehicle trip increase over the course of a peak hour. We're well below those criteria. And those criteria are really established to focus the assessment on locations that will be materially impacted by a project. So in this particular case, the only location that has or meets the criteria for formal study would be the Main Street Forest Ridge intersection. I'm aware that there are many other locations in Concord that may not work as well as this particular gateway location, particularly to the east. But those locations don't rise to the level of warranting study based on the level of traffic that we're likely to add for the project.
Yeah, thanks.
No further questions?
Just not for traffic, but just picking up, I wasn't clear what would happen to the summer camp given that some of the facilities are going to be replaced by this development.
Yeah, that's a good question. So our intention is to relocate the summer camp. Obviously, these buildings will be put on the site that the camp currently operates. So the camp will be relocated to a different site. So we're still studying that. We're looking for locations. Yes, in Concord.
That's it. Yeah, no, I do have a comment question, and it's not, well, actually, I think it's really to the Pinewood Group, and I appreciate the presentation of the architect looking back to Concord and what's here in vernacular for the buildings. I appreciate that, but I actually, instead of looking to the past, I would like to look at the future a little bit more, and actually I would like the whole project to look to the future a little bit more. Concord has, the town of Concord has pledged to cut the greenhouse gas emissions to 80% by 2050. That's a pretty darn lofty goal. As setting an example, the town is working on getting all of its buildings to net zero energy. The town, and I mean the citizens of Concord, have approved a pretty darn big override last year in order to build a state-of-the-art middle school that is going to be net zero energy as well. So when I hear your presentation tonight, the only vague mention of sustainability is your landscape architect, who said that there's like a dozen trees planted in the parking lot that will combat the heat effect. I'm a bit disappointed in that, because I mean, as a town, we are trying to set an example by bringing up all of our buildings to a certain standard. We're voting an override. We're putting, as a town, the citizens of this town, putting the money where the mouth is and setting an example. And then I am hearing you all present tonight, and there is in our goal to cutting our greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, you guys aren't contributing anything to that. As a matter of fact, you're hindering the town to get to that point, and you're putting a great burden on the town and the citizens of getting there. And as I just said, I mean, it's a bit disappointing because we are very keenly aware that in the confines of a 40B project, you can do really good stuff. You can do geothermal. You can have a really limited site disturbance. You can have combating your heat island effect by putting parking under a building. You can have solar arrays. It all can be done. And I'm looking to this project team to really go back to the drawing board and come back with a plan that you don't even have to help the town to get to its goals, but you certainly can't hinder the town to get to its goals by 2050. And you know, I understand that you have the site that you have, that you can't, that you don't meet the smart growth criteria, that your connectivity is limited, but as far as, for instance, site disturbance goes, the whole site is from property line to property line is going to be, you know, cut down all the trees. There is a substantial amount of topography, as your civil engineer said. You're not working with the topography. You're coming in, you're leveling the whole site, and you're building this. You're not sensitive to the landscape that there is at all. You're not working with the land that you have, and you're just, you're not, I think, putting your best foot forward in terms of coming up with any sustainability items at all, other than, as I said, trees in the parking lot. And you know, so I'd like to, and this is not, I'd like to send you back to the drawing board and revise your plans so that we as a town are not burdened by this, because we are. And that's my point. And you don't have to react. You don't have to respond now. And but you be my guest. But you know there is. I am expecting more than just a verbal response to this.
Mr. Chair, I'm Mike Burnett. I'm one of the partners at the architectural team.
Yep.
I guess I'm a little embarrassed that we didn't put more of that to the forefront of this presentation. As we know, buildings represent 40% of the greenhouse gases emitted in this country. We take that very seriously. We expect from a building perspective to be achieving providing an all-electric building in terms of its fuel needs. We're expecting to adhere to passive house standards in terms of the buildings themselves. We, as a matter of course, look to evaluate solar options in particular on buildings, since those are really come to the forefront of the market as being something that actually is readily done and is more, we didn't put it forth in some ways. I apologize. We kind of take it for granted for sometimes because it's part of everything kind of that we do. In terms of the building, the layout, and the development, we're very sensitive to the issues that you raised and the disruption to the land. We're also very sensitive to what are normal concerns about, for example, working with the height of a building and staying. People are very sensitive to height. If we were able to raise buildings to 4-story buildings, it frees up a lot more of the site. Frankly, didn't expect there would be a lot of appetite for kind of pushing some of those limits to free up more open space. If there's some opportunities to do that, I can assure you we're very happy to look at that and preserve landscape buffer, the environment that exists as much as we can. So we do take that seriously. I just wanted to convey that on behalf of the design team, the development team, that it's not something that we've swept under the rug, and nor do we expect to.
I appreciate that. Thank you. That's partial answer, but partially what I was looking for. But I think you'll hear more. I'm sure from the public and we can discuss this further at our next meeting. So with that, opening up to the public, please state your name and address and/or affiliation.
Mr. Chair, Keith Bergman, 56 White Avenue. I chair the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. And the trust has been paying close attention to the two 40B proposals that have been filed in Concord. And we would put the challenge out there that we would like both 40Bs to be fossil fuel free. The town of Concord is one of only 10 communities in the Commonwealth who are authorized to impose fossil fuel free restrictions on new development and major rehab. The other 40B that was who filed their application 4 months before this one will be compliant with those standards. And we would challenge this project also to be compliant. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, Brian Burkhardt of Border Road. My home was in most of those pictures. The Concord Housing Foundation, Concord Planning Board, and Concord Select Board have all outlined their reasons for denying approval for this project pursuant to town planning, groundwater contamination, transportation, and many other issues. Let me add my perspective as a Concord resident and neighbor to the proposed site. The application mentions that there are, quote, a handful of houses on Border Road directly to the east of the proposed site for development. In fact, Border Road has over 30 homes, one of them is mine, and Thoreau Hills neighborhood has closer to 150. All that to say is that there are far more than a handful of neighbors with an interest in the development of this land. One of the biggest selling points of moving to Concord is access to nature. I say selling point because the first thing that our realtor said when we looked at our house was that from our driveway, we could see the entrance to a section of the Concord Trail system. This specific trail network through Powder Mill Woods has multiple entrances from Thoreau Hills neighborhood and features remnants of buildings and rail tracks that date back to the 1800s and were written about by Thoreau himself. You may think that it's already surrounded by the Thoreau Club and Blackbirch community as well as a Superfund site, and how scenic could it be, but you'd be wrong. Besides running into wildlife like deer and owls in these woods, because of the unique topography, upon descending the first hill of this trail, you find yourself completely immersed in nature, surrounded by woods on all sides without a sight line to a single structure. It's a hike my family has enjoyed for years. Just last month, my 3-year-old finally, for the first time, made it the entire trail without needing to be carried. The project proposes to, quote, reinforce the historic character of Concord. I contend this is another case of paving paradise to put up a parking lot. More specifically, paving a summer camp to put up a parking lot. And what could be more antithetical to the character of Concord than that? Concord's Division of Natural Resources designed and installed a trail system and even created a brochure for these woods for a reason which would be completely negated by dropping 216 apartments and 407 parking spaces into the midst of our neighborhoods. Being able to walk to a public trail from your front door, giving our families and children access to public lands surrounded by nature, that is the historic character of Concord we should preserve. In closing, as a resident of the neighborhood abutting this proposed build site, I urge the board to deny comprehensive permit application and ensure that this section of Concord Trail System continues to provide our families and residents access to Powder Mill Woods and not Powder Mill parking lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. No. Don't. If you agree with somebody, please go to the microphone and you'll have the floor. But yeah, no otherwise. Go ahead, please go.
Andrew Boardman, 110 Hillcrest Road. I'm vice chair of the planning board, but on my own behalf speaking today, I also was involved with the Public Works Commission, so I have a little bit of flavor of that as well. One thing I'll note, which was glanced over pretty quickly in the presentation, was the floor area ratio. It's just asked as like a throwaway waiver. The planning board discussed that extensively over the last 2 years of how to tweak it, what to change. We ultimately determined not to because of how complicated it is. For those who don't know, that's a massing regulation, the idea is that you can't build something too big on too small a lot. And so the idea is it's anti-mansionization. The concern was people were losing the character of the town because small houses were torn and big vertical structures were thrown up. This is a 13-acre lot that is somehow running into the FAR, which means these buildings are really big. And that's something to consider when just how many units are being put in, where ordinarily the Zoning Board of Appeals discussed granting waivers for FAR where it's a Residence B and the lot's only 3,000 square feet or 4,000 square feet and you can't actually build a house on it without some sort of give. This is 13 acres, so you're talking about massing something enormous. With regard to despoiling the woods, I know there's a lot of, again, they talked about elevations and whatnot. I did note in the plan that there manages to be a 10-foot chain link fence in the corner of the lot because they've created such a large slope where they had to, level and move things around. So this lot will lose cohesion with the rest of what is out there now. Potentially, a 10-foot chain link fence on top of a retaining wall seems like a major change. Additionally, 2 separate water treatment facilities within the conservation overlay district. Concord has, you can see in the town warrant, there's a bond article because water resiliency is an issue. One of the town's major well sources is in Thoreau Hills, and these sites are sensitive. And if you start putting large treatment facilities, you don't necessarily know what the impact will be, even if, I don't know what the DEP process, I won't pretend to opine on that, but if the town has problems getting large, doing that, I won't get into that part, but just things to consider that I know other people are aware of within the neighborhood and within the town.
Thank you. Also a bit of information for you all. Given the fact that this is a comprehensive permit application, a 40B project, denial of the project will be very hard and typically is not done because most likely it doesn't serve the town to its best. So in the end, we are looking to approve this with conditions, changes, modifications, edits, etc. So there is going to be something built here. So just so that everybody has that understanding, because as I said, disapproving of not approving this will not be in the best interest of the town in the end. We are also, besides our 40B consultant that we have, we will also be hiring peer review consultants to look at traffic, to look at stormwater, to look at groundwater and the septic there, so that we all have a great deal of comfort that what's being proposed will work and will not further burden the town. Anybody else?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Brian O'Donnell, and I'm a trustee on the Black Birch Trust Committee, and we've already sent in our preliminary notices and comments for both Black Birch and Black Birch 2, as you saw. So I won't go through the details there, but appreciate the comments to date so far. Appreciate the presentation by the development team. It's very helpful. I will say that key concerns for us are certainly the road and the point of questioning around overburdening and harming. A reminder that yes, this is a private road. It is subject to an agreement. It is also subject to an association of which we are a part, and the abutters are a part of. But the abutters pay for this road, which also provides emergency access to the Prescott, and it also provides the primary access to the Concord Municipal Power and Light plant, which supplies all of the power to the town of Concord. So it's an important road. There's a fair amount of traffic on it, as is noted. This is a significant increase. It's not a small increase in the amount of traffic activity that'll be on the road. The road is approaching the point where it's going to need some additional work on the road. And again, the abutters, the participants in the Forest Ridge Association pay all of the costs for the road. This development will not change that. It will add the additional wear and tear, not just the construction wear and tear, but the ongoing wear and tear for the future onto the road. There'll be no additional income from anybody else. The existing abutters will have to pick that up and have to pay for that. So that is an issue, and the issue of overburden and harming on the road is a key concern, and will need to be discovered in terms of what that impact is, and certainly that's going to be a cause of much discussion. I will also say that the other concerns for the associations, the local associations, are around the cul-de-sac and the impact on the cul-de-sac having 5 driveways entering into a very, very small cul-de-sac that was built to accommodate the traffic flow for industrial, light industrial zoned areas. Now adding, of course, the Thoreau Club has been there, and that's the largest traffic generator, but now we're adding a significant amount of traffic to a very small cul-de-sac with a very large cut within feet of another cut, which serves the Black Birch community. And so, we're very concerned about that, concerned about safety around that, and concerned about why the site is actually a fairly large site. Clearly, it was the way it's defined here was developed to use the minimum amount of space that could possibly be used to make the project up. And there's no setbacks on this driveway. It's going to be right next to the residential properties and stuff. So certainly concerns about where that driveway comes into the cul-de-sac, if the cul-de-sac can handle that volume, what the safety issues are related to that, why it can't be in a different location, why can't they be a little bit more land associated with running that driveway a little bit further away from the direct abutting of the residential communities and stuff. So some additional concerns that we have around the road, around safety, in addition to some of the things that the other folks brought up here with respect to, a very natural piece of land that's going to be very highly, highly developed. There'll be pretty much, I appreciate the landscape drawings, but when you get out there and take a walk through, you'll see what that's actually going to look like, and it's going to look a lot different than the nice green space that's up there. My last comment is, you talked, Teo, about scheduling the walkthrough, and I would request that the board or the planning board find a way to maybe mark some of the key elements of the site, so when the walkthrough is done, people can really kind of see what that really looks like, what the real impacts are, how steep some of those slopes are going to be when the construction is done, what the impact is in terms of the actual visuals, and how close it actually is to the abutters and stuff. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Was it? Yeah, it was one on one. Please go ahead. And then after that, we'll take some virtual questions.
Good evening. My name's Tony Forzaglia. I live right around the corner here in Cranberry Lane condominiums. As it is right now, trying to make a left or a right out of that street, I could sit there sometimes 2-3 minutes. And look, I appreciate what you're trying to do here, but something else, and a lot of comments about the road and about the traffic. My daughter lives around the corner, and just trying to get to her house sometimes can be a pain to go pick up the grandkids, but this, again, we're just a small condominium unit. However, I'm concerned about the traffic. Also, on the other side of the Superfund site is where we're located. Mm-hmm. And, people tend to want to wander, and, I hate to see fences. I come from New York City. I grew up in the Bronx, where there were fences everywhere, and, parks to get in and out. And All I can say is, please keep the small properties, the small homeowners. So many people coming in and out of Main Street in those small houses, trying to get access to that road. I've seen them sitting there. I stop traffic sometimes just to let people out because people don't stop. So that's my say, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Not sure whether there's any more questions in the room here, but if so, let's pause them and let's go to some virtual questions. Barbara, name and address, please.
I'm Barbara Pike, and I live on Border Road. We're seeing the images of the development. It seems to be very densely developed. Could you tell us what % of the land will be covered with parking, buildings, roadways?
I don't know. Do you, Mr. Yeah, I don't have those numbers here, but I'm looking at the civil engineers.
I thought perhaps the developer would know that.
Yeah, the civil engineer is coming, and if we don't get it now, I'm sure we'll get it by next meeting.
Yeah,
so,
through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair. We're going to need to come back with that number to give you an exact amount. Right now, the lot coverage is going to be about 72% of 13 acres. So it's the site itself is 160 square feet, and will be 838 will be the lot coverage. So it's about 72% of the lot will be.
I was going to advise you not shooting from the hip here because then.
Well, I had it. It's on our zoning table, which I had, but we'll confirm those numbers for the next hearing.
Cool, that's great. And could you add to those numbers also percentage of land that's not going to be disturbed?
Sure.
That would be nice to know. Okay, Tom Aylesworth, please.
Can I ask the second question?
Oh, sorry. Yes. Sorry, I thought your hand was gone. So
okay.
Go ahead.
You indicated in the presentation that you're preparing this development for a diverse age group, which I assume would include children. And I'm wondering if you have any plans for play space for the children.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to? Can you guys pull up the landscape drawing and then can point out play space?
I didn't actually see play space. I saw a barbecue space and a little swimming pool.
Yeah, so
like swings and slides and whatever little children like to do.
Yeah, so obviously these are preliminary drawings that Sean Sanger and his team did. So if that's something that's of interest, we'll definitely take that under consideration. But we just kind of wanted to show an initial look of what this could look like. Certainly, if that's of interest, that's something we can consider moving forward.
Thank you.
And Barbara, I could also just mention, as you've got the site plan back up there, within those courtyard spaces, there are definitely opportunities within there, if that's certainly something that would be desirable, I think, from the resident standpoint as well as the broader community. So I think we'll take notes. It's good to hear, and we can certainly continue to explore that.
Well, I'm just comparing it with the Prescott, which has, pretty good play space.
Yeah. Good, but the applicant will come back with something on this for the next hearing. So Barbara, not to cut you off the second time, no follow-up questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Thomas Aylesworth, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. My name is Tom Aylesworth. I'm an attorney at Marcus Arrico, Emmer & Brooks in Braintree. We represent the Forest Ridge Association. That is the private organization of the lot owners along Forest Ridge Road. I am the author of that letter that was referred to by one of the board members at the beginning of the discussion part of the hearing tonight. The association's concerns, the preliminary concerns, they're just summarized generally in my letter. I don't need to go through them in any great detail. No surprise, those concerns focus on traffic, the curb cut, pedestrian safety, and the maintenance costs. What I did want to talk about briefly tonight is a point that was raised earlier questions posed to Attorney Ward. And that is the applicability of this private agreement, this private association agreement to these proceedings. It is true, I mean, Mr. Attorney Ward's correct. To get an adjudication of the meaning of that agreement, we'd have to go to court. And we're hoping not to do that. Here's why. It is a fundamental, as the board knows, it's a fundamental requirement of any applicant for a 40B project to demonstrate site control. This applicant's site control is subject to the private agreement. So the applicant has the burden of demonstrating to the board that it has sufficient site control to do the development in the way that it's asking for. And as the board member mentioned at the beginning of the discussion period in questions to Attorney Ward, there are restrictions. And so our position is that private agreement and those restrictions are relevant to these proceedings and should be discussed. As I mentioned in my letter of February 23, the association is going to retain its own traffic engineer to do an independent study. We look forward to further discussing these issues with you as this matter goes forward. I believe I heard Mr. Ward say that the applicant looks forward to trying to work these issues out. So do we. I can tell the board that the message so far has not exactly been, that has not been the tone of the communications to date. So we look forward to discussions with the applicant and trying to work things out. And that's it for tonight. Mostly I just wanted to introduce myself. Thank you for hearing me tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Aylesworth.
Mr.
Ward is here ready to answer.
A couple of things. Yes, I think we would like to work things out. With respect to the contentiousness, is that we merely raised the point to the association. We thought it would be inappropriate to spend money that we had been paying as part of the association to oppose us. Like I said, we pay 42% into the association, and they've accumulated money for maintenance and everything, and now they're spending part of what we think is partly our money against us. It just seemed a little unfair. With respect to site control, that decision has already been made by the subsidizing agency. So we got our project eligibility letter. That's it. I mean, we don't revisit that. So to the extent, again, that there's a question in the association's mind of our rights to use the road, it's a private agreement, where we hope to not have to go to litigation or anything like that, and we hope to work it out. We want to talk to them about it.
Yeah, thank you. That's something between you two parties. As far as site control goes, yes, you submitted some information to the state, Mass Housing, I believe it was, on which you got your PEL, and that you now use as we have site control. I'm not sure whether Mass Housing was aware of this agreement. And that's, I think, what Mr. Aylesworth is pointing to. So that, again, is something that you know, I'll leave you both to
Sure.
figure out, because as you said, I think that goes beyond the confines of the 40B application that we are concerned with, except for the fact that, indeed, do you have legal access to your site? That's but there's attorneys that can look into that. As I said, there's two of you, and our town council is also on the line, and I'm sure she will be opining on this as well. So.
No, like I said, our goal is to be as cooperative as we can be, and we would like to work this through with our fellow association members. But I can also tell you that I'm intimately familiar with the HAC decisions on these types of issues, and I'm pretty confident that we're okay.
Great, thank you.
If I could respond briefly.
Did you have a follow-up, Ms. Aylesworth?
Yes, just simply this. We also look forward to having discussions and trying to come to a resolution. The characterization of the first letter we received from the applicant was not just that they think it's unfair because they're spending money into the association. There's also a threat to sue the trustees individually if they have the audacity to raise any concerns about this project before this board. So I hope that that's behind us.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good. Next person on with the hand up is Honor Wiener.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I understand that the
name and address, please.
I'm sorry, Honor Wiener, 1011 Main Street. I understand that the presenters suggested they're not obligated to look at the impact on traffic in other areas other than the Forest Ridge intersection with Route 62. I live on Main Street, and I think the addition of the number of vehicles that are potentially heading towards Route 2 to access the Route 2 has potentially a big impact on traffic in West Concord, particularly in combined with another project that will add to traffic on Main Street heading to Route 2. So I am hoping that the board will look at traffic, the impact on traffic in other areas in addition to the specific intersection between Forest Ridge and Route 62, and look at the impact of the additional number of vehicles coming through West Concord and heading back from Route 2 to the site, because I think it's very significant and traffic is already a huge concern.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the traffic consultant had heard your concerns, and we'll come back with some answers.
Thank you very much.
Some answers in the next hearing, and then we will have our peer reviewer look at that as well. Next person on the list is Paul Boehm. Name and address, please.
Yes, hi. Paul Boehm, 11 Ridgewood Road. I'm coming in a little late, so I apologize maybe if I go over a little old ground, but I've noticed in the application that there are requests for waivers, 10 different waivers of Town of Concord bylaws. And I hope that the zoning board gets some explanation for why those waivers are requested and the impacts of those waivers. There are a couple of them that are quite important. And perhaps groundwater has been mentioned before, but the request to waive the requirements around the groundwater conservancy district, I think, are pretty important. This property lies within that district, and the impact of groundwater, both positive and negative, in the sense that all the paving and the buildings will reduce the amount of recharged groundwater to the aquifer, and on the negative, perhaps the impacts of the sewage and other implications for discharge that may be coming out of the operations. So that one especially is important, and I didn't see in the application a rationale for that waiver. There are a couple of other important waivers in there. I won't belabor those points, but I think all of them require explanation rather than waiving. And I don't know the workings of the board, and I assume you asked those questions, but there are a couple of important ones in there that require explanation and perhaps additional study before those are waived, especially on the groundwater part. So thank you for allowing me to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Boehm. Yes, we will have a peer reviewer review the septic system or the leaching fields and its impacts on groundwater as we go along. And as far as the waivers go, this is a preliminary list that they submitted, that the applicant submitted for, and the waivers are pretty global here still. and they need to be a lot more specific before we can vote on them. But most likely be very late in the process. The board will spend some time to go through each and every waiver and decide yay or nay at that point in time. But the project needs to be a little bit more developed before we get there. I mean, there's still too many open ends, and everything is still too schematic. But you know, that's why we have this process, so that we can hone in on what the waivers exactly are for. I mean, I'm looking at the waiver that, you know, the zero energy pathway waiver, for instance, the last waiver here, that's, you know, right off the bat, that wouldn't be a waiver that I could support at this point in time. So we'll discuss that, and that will come up during this process. So stay tuned. Please chime in. And give us
thank you. I knew that the board was going to look into that. I just want to express the concern.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
very much appreciated. We like to hear from. Do we have a response?
Oh no, I was going to say you're right, but I didn't see the the hands up. Before we get done, I just wanted to acknowledge Mr. Pizzanola's letter and his suggestion about scheduling different subjects for different hearings. I think that's a really efficient, wise way to do it, so that, like, you do the stormwater one night and then you don't keep talking about stormwater 4 more times, you know, so you sort of pick everything, you know, you get the peer reviewers, and you go through it that one night. So I thought that it was a thoughtful list, and I just wanted to make sure before we left for the night to get, I thought we were getting close.
Yeah, there's some more questions. And hopefully here's some questions here as well. But yeah, no, we'll set up a schedule, and Joe's list is a very good starting point to go with. But we have some more hands. So Julie Doherty, please, name and address.
Hi, this is Secretary Brian Doherty on Julie's account at 66 Border Road.
Okay.
Our question had to do, and not overly familiar with the process here, but our focus, or one of the big questions we have, is the impact of the development on the schools and other public resources like the fire department, police department, things like that. I don't know if that's something that gets covered with this review, or how that's looked at.
I'm looking here to the 40B consultant, Joe Pizzanola. He's going to chime in.
Good evening. Just to introduce myself, I am Joe Pizzanola, and I am here under a grant from Massachusetts Housing Partnership to assist the board in navigating what is a very complicated process that is 40B. With regards to impacts to the schools, the regulations and the case law are pretty clear that the impacts to the schools are not something this board can consider in deliberation. What I have recommended, and I do on many larger projects, is whether or not the applicant would be willing to do a preliminary fiscal impact analysis, which would look at the projected number of school children and the general costs associated with that, the impacts to public works, fire department, police department. Understanding that study cannot be used by the board for deliberation in deciding whether or not to approve or deny the project or condition the project in any way, but it's an offer by the applicant to assist the town and the community in assessing the impacts of such a large project coming in all at once, so that all of the various departments in town can have access to that information to say, okay, we've got to get ready for X, Y, and Z. Many times the developer is willing to do that. Again, if it's couched in that manner and everyone understands its ultimate use. In certain instances, the applicants have agreed to do that, but after the issuance of the comprehensive permit. So the information's coming, the impacts aren't there yet, and that way it's quite clear the board couldn't use any of the information kind of against them. But in short answer, the board is not allowed to consider the impacts to the schools.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. Doherty was right. No follow-up question? Doesn't
No, thank you.
Okay, good, thank you. Peggy's iPad, name and address, please. Peggy's iPad might have hit the wrong button and disconnected. So we'll keep that under advisement. Might get back to that. Are there any other questions, comments? Yeah, please.
Diane Valadosha, 78 Forest Ridge Road. I have a couple comments. One is relating to traffic at the intersection of Forest Ridge and Main Street. I know the traffic study shows it's not a huge impact, but as someone who leaves there during rush hour, taking left turn can be extremely difficult and take longer than just a few seconds to do. And also, coming home at night, especially during the winter season, often there's a condition of the ice skating rink is having hockey practice or something. A lot of cars coming and going from there. A lot of cars trying to come and go from Forest Ridge and on Main Street, and you get like this sort of like localized like gridlock that happens where cars can't take lefts and rights because other cars are trying to take lefts and rights, and it just sort of like bottlenecks until some people are nice and let you in. So I don't know if that's going to get worse with this project, but that's something that needs to be considered. And also the crosswalk that exists there needs to be upgraded. Right now, it's not a safe crosswalk. It needs to probably be signalized. Like sometimes you see these bike paths when they cross main roads at blink lights, or someone can have a light to blink them to stop, because I'm concerned someone will get hit and killed trying to cross the street to go to the Stop and Shop or one of the stores. And I also just want to support what the chair was saying about trying to make the site more sustainable and trying to move parking underground. That would reduce the impervious area, reduce the limit of disturbance. You wouldn't have to take down as many trees. It would also probably like limit the size of the subsurface infiltration system, maybe get rid of it entirely. And another idea to consider for sustainability would be do rainwater harvesting from the roofs of the building to put them into a cistern to use as irrigation for the landscaped areas, so that you're not using town water for that purpose, to eliminate that. Another idea is using like porous pavements on the sidewalk areas and in the common areas, like with the pavers, so that again, that promotes infiltration and reduces the overall stormwater impact and doesn't require and reduces the overall footprint of the project.
Terrific, thank you. Those are all great suggestions, and I hope that the applicant heard those as well. I'm sure they heard them. So, and indeed, looking at a crosswalk at the bottom of the street, and I don't know, I'm not that familiar with that area of town, but what sidewalks do, where they go, how they cross, I think that would be just, that would be a good visual to have. So if I wanted to walk to the Stop and Shop from this property, how would I walk? Can I get there safely? That's sort of like get a visual that shows that.
Could I ask the traffic consultant? You may not have, you don't have to answer it right now, but in your traffic consulting work, did you consider the ice rink activity October through April or May? I'm very familiar with that ice rink.
Yeah, no, I think
it is a busy place during the winter.
It's an excellent comment, and we're taking copious notes, and we appreciate the last commenter. They're excellent comments. we will look more closely at the scheduling of those events so that we can understand seasonally what that might mean
Okay.
and
Thank
what
you.
the alignment of that looks like. Yeah. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Peggy is back. Peggy's iPad, your name and address, please. Peggy?
Keep talking.
Okay, Peggy Minor, Black Birch Lane. 3 Black Birch Lane, and this is my husband, Andrew Inglis, who's going to talk.
I apologize, my abject apologies. I gave the wrong address before. I live at 3 Black Birch Lane.
Okay.
And, and I have a few questions. First of all, the chairman, I'm very glad that you brought up the fact that in their presentation, nobody mentioned anything about sustainability or ecological or environmental improvements to the area. No solar panels were mentioned. Nothing like 2x6 construction, triple pane windows, anything like that. And what that did was that spurred another architect to come up and say, of course we were going to think about things. Of course those things are in our plans. Of course that. But that should have been mentioned originally to help us all feel a little bit better about it. Also, to the chairman, I'm interested that you seem to indicate that this plan is going to go through in some form anyway, that it's pretty much guaranteed that it's going to go through in some form. And I'm interested by the process that the Zoning Board of Appeals uses to decide that even before a hearing, an open hearing takes place. And I have a couple of other things. First of all, does anyone, when you walk that site, and I imagine many people have not seen that site closely, do you have any idea what's going to happen when they start building that access road? The number of trees that are going to be cut down, the amount of fill that's going to have to be put in there, the complete clear cutting of a huge swath of land to build that access road right off of a traffic circle it's going to look horrible. And they're talking about putting in other trees on the site to make it look nice. It's going to destroy a beautiful area in that part of Forest Ridge Road. And so is approval given so that to help with the town with taxes? I mean, what does the town look at when it's approving a project like this? I mean, you're destroying some beautiful neighborhoods, or risking to destroy some beautiful neighborhoods to put in ugly apartments for hundreds of people. And also the traffic, I may have read this wrong, but the traffic is 200 cars peak. That's what it was measured. And this is going to bring 80 cars per hour peak. So that means that that's going to be what, 40% addition to the peak traffic? If I guess that's the worst case scenario or something. But I mean, we got a lot of figures here that have been glossed over and haven't been looked at carefully. And I think it's just sad. It's sad that this has been allowed to get this far. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Peggy. This is the first hearing. So we haven't gone that far yet. We have, give or take 150 days to go still in this process, and potentially if we haven't flushed everything out at the end of that, we might get an extension granted by the applicant, but we definitely would need to show some good faith effort here on our end to be working diligently on this. As far as approvals go, this project, and I'm going to butcher this, and Joe, you want to take this, or
I can take
is yeah? I'll defer to Joe Piznola here.
Just a little bit of information with regards to what is Chapter 40B. Chapter 40B was enacted in 1969 by the state legislature. It's sometimes called the Anti-Snob Zoning Law. And essentially what it was there was a belief amongst the legislature at that time that the suburban communities were zoning themselves out of participating in helping house people in need of affordable housing through zoning, two acre zoning or 1 acre or whatever, however they were doing it. Towns were not allowing any multifamily. So the legislature came up with this Chapter 40B, which said that if a developer comes into a community that has less than 10% of its housing stock deemed affordable by the definition of the state, then an applicant could come to a community and propose a Chapter 40B project in exchange for doing at least 25% of the units affordable. I think the most important thing to understand in the statute and the accompanying regulations is the presumption. And that presumption is that the need for affordable housing outweighs local concerns. And local concerns are defined as your zoning, your local bylaws and regulations. And that is where the applicant is entitled to ask for waivers from those local requirements. And the mere presumption of that the need for affordable housing outweighs those concerns is a very high bar to overcome with regards to the things that the board can look at and will look at through this process with regards to the design, environmental impact, health, safety, all of those items. A problem with one or all of those items in cumulative would have to really raise to an egregious level to tip that balance in the eyes of the state. And what happens with projects is they come in and there's this kind of questioning by the neighborhood and the community as to why this is happening. Why can they skirt these laws and these bylaws, local concerns, and propose something like this? When a board does either deny a project or overly condition it in a manner that is not to the liking of the developer's recourse is to appeal to the Housing Appeals Committee. And the Housing Appeals Committee is within the Department of Housing and Community Development. It's not a court. It acts a lot like a court. There's a magistrate and there's a process that's very similar to a court process. But that process is heavily skewed towards the creation of affordable housing under the statute and the regulations, using that presumption. So the board needs to, that's why the chairman mentions denial's really not possible. It's not, of course it's possible, but it's not something that is advisable, because when it goes to the Housing Appeals Committee, you lose control locally. So by staying in the process, trying to compel the developer to make modifications and changes, trying to make the project as good as it can be, and then conditioning it in a manner that protects and mitigates for the impacts. That's the best that the community can get. The best advice for any community is to try to chart their own course and get above 10%. Once the community is above 10%, then they're not subject to these applications, right? So that they don't have to go through this. But it it is unwieldy. It's not something that is ever embraced, and that's why I'm here. I'm here to help navigate the process. And many times what I end up saying and advising to the board sounds like I'm on the developer side, but that the process is on the developer side, and I'm here just to help ground and keep the board on course to do the very best they can do to make the project as palatable as it possibly can be.
Thanks, Joe. I think that will answer the question. Let's take a question from the audience here, please, and then after that we go back to virtual questions again.
Mike Berry, 18 Sweet Birch Lane. I'm an abutter to the proponent as well as a trustee at Sweet Birch Lane, as well as on the board for Forest Ridge Road. So I have a lot of camps. I agree with I support everything that was said by our sister condo association. So Sweet Birch Lane is in concert with Black Birch Lane community. And also, I encourage to talk more with the proponent, because I was the one that asked to talk to the proponent originally, and they agreed to a meeting and then didn't show, and the next day I was issued a letter of cease and desist. So this intimidation tactic, maybe you want to go to court. I'd rather not. I'd rather sit down and talk about it. So I would encourage more talk. Items that weren't discussed tonight, I would like to ask, how short are we from the 10% goal?
We were a handful of units short.
50.
Then
Right.
we. You want to do it?
Yeah,
I do.
51 units short. The community's at 9.97, and currently there's another project before this board, which is going to put if both this project and the other project are approved, then you'll be well over 12%. The problem is that your status versus the 10% is measured at time of application. So because the other 40B has not yet been approved, then you're under 10%, and the board has to take both and consider both and move both fully through. They can't pick and choose and say, well, we're going to pick this one because we like it better. It's going to put us over 10%, and we're going to throw this one out. So they're both in. The board has to let both run its course, and the status is for both of those has to be considered under 10%.
And shall I assume that if one of them gets approved, the other one doesn't?
No, that's what I'm saying, is that the board has to consider the status of the town with regards to the subsidizing housing inventory to be under 10%. Because at the time of application of this one, the other one hadn't been approved because it's still not approved. And it's just unfortunate that that's going to put you well over the 10%.
The other questions that weren't addressed this evening is construction vehicles. How many, how long, and will it inhibit existing traffic in the neighborhood?
And good, that's a good question, and I'm sure that the applicant will get back to us, where your contract is going to park, et cetera, during construction.
And the other question I had was curb cuts at the Rotary. I'm interested in what that is, but almost more importantly, what is the capacity of that Rotary, and how close are we to it currently, and what will we be post-development?
Good. That's also a question that we will, the traffic consultant will come back to us with. Paul Boom is gone, but now we have a call-in user. So please state your name and your address, please.
This is Linda Escobedo. I'm a member of the Select Board, but speaking for myself, I have a question that perhaps is for the consultant to the board, and that is, does the town, through the ZBA, in their process with the 40B, have the option to request local preference?
Yes, they do. The local preference would be in the dissemination of the affordable rental units. The applicant, through the lottery that they have to do, can have up to 70% local preference option in there. The one thing that I caution is that it's the burden of the town to prove to the state that there is a need for that level of local preference. So certainly, in many times, what happens is the lottery agent and the consultants that the applicant's team will engage to put this lottery plan together and to administer the lottery have a lot of knowledge that may be useful to the town in the town's justification of the local preference. So it behooves the town to work with the developer to put that package together to hopefully get what the town desires, which is to help the residents here in Concord.
Correct, and I know that we're going to be requesting to have local preference up to 70%, and we understand that the town needs to have the burden of proving that we need all the 70%, and just so that everybody also knows, the 70% is 70% of the affordable units will go to town residents if the state approves it, but that's only at lease up. So that local preference goes away once the project is fully leased up, and then pretty much I think it's just going to go down a list. But then there's no local.
That's understood. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? Not online. Anybody in the audience? The hardy people that are still here. Yeah. Quick one. Good.
Probably for you. So there's a safe harbor provision in the 40B requirements and stuff. Is that a potential for play for the town, or it's a requirement around? Do you have a plan? Is the plan approved? Have you been making progress with the plan? That kind of thing. But safe harbor, any opportunities there? Right.
The safe harbor provision is twofold. One, you'd need a housing production plan that is currently approved, and then it has to be certified as to the numbers created. And it's 0.5% would get the town a year safe harbor, and 1% would give the town 2 years. There haven't been approved projects in the last 1 or 2 years that puts the town in that status. So it's not afforded. If it were, the board would have to, within the first 15 days of opening the public hearing, invoke that they will utilize safe harbor. So, but it's not an option at this point.
But if I can follow up on that, Joe, we have two comprehensive permit applications before us right now. We're still on because we haven't approved any one of them, we're still on the 10%. Could a third project file now? We have, 417 units.
Yes.
So a third party?
Yes, you could get a third application because you're under. So it behooves the board to
hurry up here.
Move swiftly on the first one. No, and there's been instances when an application's been filed the day of a hearing that was going to close and approve a project, and it still didn't put them there. The other aspect of this is the denominator in the calculation doesn't change until the decennial census. So every 10 years, they update that number and your percentage drops. And I was on the zoning board in Hudson, Mass for 20 years, and we actually dropped, after the 2010 census, we dropped under 10%, and within 2 weeks, we had an application for a 350 unit project, even though we only dropped 40 units under the 10%. It's an imperfect system.
Yeah. And as I said, I thought we're about a handful of units short. I just had a text from Elizabeth Hughes, and she said we're one unit short. So it is what it is. Here we are. Have we run out of questions here and virtual? It looks that way. So next order of business is scheduling a site visit.
Yes. Some of the aspects that are in my letter of February 14th are scheduling a site visit. I think there was a great recommendation by one of the neighbors to have the applicant stake some important features to help the board see the site, because you're going to be walking in the woods, and it's going to be difficult to get your bearings. So the board should discuss that with the applicant as far as what you're interested in seeing, whether it be building corners, clearing limits, or whatever that be. There are some additional materials that I'm suggesting in my letter. It would be good at some point to get the applicant's feedback on that as to whether or not they agree and will provide that additional information. As far as procuring the peer review consultants, I know that Elizabeth has put together scopes for civil and traffic reviews.
Architecture as well.
And architecture, and she will be getting those out to secure proposals. Once those proposals are in, the board can decide on that and then request from the applicant funds to be put into a Chapter 53 account to fund those peer reviews. The board should look to continue to get input from town departments and other boards. The package was originally disseminated to all departments and boards in town, as is required, and those should be coming through. Lastly, it's just coordinating the project review schedule. As Attorney Ward said, I've outlined a skeleton of a monthly meeting layout, but it's highly dependent on securing the peer review, getting the peer reviews in, getting responses from the applicant on the peer review to then be able to schedule a productive session to talk about traffic, or to talk about civil engineering, or architecture, or landscape architecture, whatever that be. So that will change from meeting to meeting. So I think it's at this point the board should talk about a site visit, talk about the continuance to a date certain, and what we might anticipate for subject matters at that meeting.
Thank you, Joe. Just a point of clarification or addition, actually, is that I just got a text from Elizabeth, who's on vacation, that peer review contracts have been executed.
Okay.
So that step, that hurdle is taken. I'm going to take one question from the audience, if you don't mind.
Cindy Howland, 2 Sweet Birch Lane.
Closer.
Cindy Howland, 2 Sweet Birch Lane, former member of the Forest Ridge Trust Association. How do we get that curb cut changed? Because I really feel very strongly it's not a safe curb cut. If the project has to happen, can that be one of the conditions? Because You guys go look at it, but it's been said many times here tonight. And even just coming out of Forest Ridge Road, the Throw Club,
Yeah.
there's not enough room for people to go stop and see another car coming. They're just, because people have almost hit me coming out of mine, coming into that road. And I'm like, whoa, people. So,
Cool.
that's, how does that happen?
Well, in the process, so this for people who didn't hear the question clearly. There is it's a question about the curb cut entering the roundabout, the cul-de-sac. There is ample opportunity. We have a process here. The traffic consultant has, pretty much stated that it's a safe curb cut. We have a peer review consultant, a traffic consultant on board now as well. They will review that. And this is all from a traffic point of view. And as we heard, one of the, I think the trust has hired a peer review traffic consultant, so they will be looking at it. And then if, there is going to be a process here, well, how we'll be looking at it and seeing whether these peer review, these technical people can come to an agreement between themselves and whether that is a safe situation or not. And if it's not, or if we can, even if it's a safe situation, we might find another solution that's safer or better. But that's in the process between the traffic consultant and the board, who will be looking at the plans. We'll be studying that, and it's so noted, your concern. So.
You sort of alluded to something that I was going to ask, which is it acceptable to the board for, once the peer review consultants are on board, for them to communicate?
Please.
Okay, because I won't bore you with some other
we
projects where they're
don't-
like, oh, no, you can't sign, which is crazy.
No. As long as communications are CC'd to our planning department.
Yeah.
Right? And then it's fine that they communicate directly. Yes.
Yeah,
But keep our planning department in the loop.
So I know our guys have written checks for civil and architecture because that was what they knew. So you now have traffic on board, so I guess we have to write a check for that too, right? So it really, I think, would be, as Mr. Prezzola said, was figuring out who can be ready by April 4th. Would that be civil?
Well, as far as peer review, I doubt that April 4th people will be ready. They just got on board.
Yeah, no, I understood.
And obviously, you know how it goes, right? They once they have a letter, they flip it
Right.
to everybody. Then your civil needs to look at it and respond to that. Right there. Our peer review, once they start reviewing civil, that's 3 or 4 weeks, quick.
Sure.
Quick, right? Then Tim needs his time to respond. That's a week or two. So I think our next meeting is. I'm seeing this as some responses to what's said here tonight. And I think there's a lot was said here tonight. But I'm not sure whether there's any other peer review.
No, I think you're right. I mean, we can certainly give textual responses to, we can provide the meter testing or what, the additional information that Mr. Pizzanola wants and give a schedule to do that. And I know the architects and the client are taking to heart the comments on design things, and you don't do those in a week, so.
If I'm thinking correctly, you might not have them done in 4 weeks. That might be actually my hope, but there's just traffic. There are some updates that can be done, and I think that can be done. I can give you a list of all sorts of other little things, like I want to see whether that retaining wall in the back is constructible. because it's, you know, on the property line in cut.
Mhm.
It's always, you know, I want to see how that works. There is, you know, I'd like to see an updated planting plan with complete plant list and a planting plan that shows the entirety of the property, not just sort of the back half cut off. I don't know whether there was any signage for the project proposed, but want to see that, you know, to see whether that needs a waiver or not. But, you know, that sort of, I mean, details we can,
Sure.
we can discuss.
Okay, are you going to have a landscape peer reviewer, or is that the architect? Is he going to do that?
It might be the architect, might be the board itself as well.
Okay. So, okay. So we'll go back and huddle up and come back with some answers, at least tentative answers.
I think that would be great, and that would be for, and our apologies for the sort of the jumble of the schedule as it moves forward between our town meeting and the preparations for town meeting, our other 40B project, our regular scheduled meeting. It's hard to find times and spots, so we're a little bit jumbled here. So, but we are continuing this, and not officially just yet, to the, what did we say?
April 4th.
April 4th. But before then, I would like to schedule a site visit, and as Joe alluded, we would like to have, you know, building corner staked, the curb cut marked out, just sort of the general things, and I would assume you need a couple, 3 weeks to do that. Right, so.
How long is it?
If it's 3 weeks, that would be fine. It could be this weekend.
Oh, no.
No. We definitely need to have it before April 4th, right? So if it's the week before the 4th, it's fine as well. And I'm actually looking at the cats here that need to be herded. We typically, in the past, Tuesdays have, Tuesdays 8:15, 8:30.
8:30.
Tuesday at 8:30, so.
Any day and time is fine, because I won't be there. Little joke. I'll volunteer everybody else.
It's either the 19th or the 26th of March.
Tim? 19th to the 26th of March.
The 19th.
Is that for me?
19th, site visit, yep.
Site visit, so that's great. Are you going to allow abutters?
Sure.
Abutters are allowed, as the abutters need to know that this is, it's not a public meeting, so the board will not discuss items out on site. They will ask questions from the applicant, and they will hopefully give us answers, but there should not be any interaction between the board members out on site. Because it's not a public hearing.
Right.
And of course the public as well. There is, you know, you can ask questions, but you might get an answer, but that's where that's at. Yeah, so building stakes, just a request from Elizabeth
It
here,
would
whether we could also get a sense of the size of the courtyards. So stake that if you can.
8:30.
8:30.
Mr. Chair, what was the other one you want to speak?
We want to get a sense of how big these courtyards are.
Okay, so if I stake all the corners of the building, you get an idea what it probably is.
Beautiful, and then
Yeah.
request for that a little cheat sheet, 8.5 by 11, where everything is for the board. Thank you.
Great.
Have we covered everything?
Okay.
Can I get a motion?
Sure, I'll move that we continue this hearing until
April 4th at 7 PM, still here?
7 p.m. here on April 4th, correct. Here and virtual as well, hybrid. So moved. Second? Okay. All in favor, say aye. 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 Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay.
Is anyone gonna?
Recording stopped.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, we have so we have a...
Sorry,
right,
we have one more
Tom?
thing.
We have one more thing.
I wouldn't want to leave.
That's true. That's true. Okay.
Okay, continuing the hearing tonight with our administrative matter. So, which is Walden Street. Just to give the board a quick update, Paul and Elizabeth asked me about this project, and I thought it was a good. I thought it was prudent to get this before the board and not file an additional for an amended project. This is, and that's well, yeah. We didn't think it was fair for the applicant to include more delays in this project, given how small the change was, but. Just sort of, as I said, the change is on the other side of the line, right? If the change, this is a square footage question, and they are increasing the square footage. And this was one of those that, over 50% kind of a thing. And so it's like, well, if it goes smaller, fine. But just because it's an increase, and, and then we depend, I don't care about the size, it needs to come back before the board. Because, our permit mentions a certain square footage. But, just because it was so small, I suggested we just do it administratively quickly now so that the applicant can move on. So therefore, Paul, this is now your, thank you for sitting through the other 2.5 hours. Just to present.
It was very interesting to you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but the board issued a permit to 2325 Warner Street in May of 22. It's a duplex building, 2 condominium units. It was for a 2-story addition spanning the rear of the house. It was essentially 2 additions because it's 2 properties and they were identical. So if Kim wants to share, if she can, A4 of the BOA approved drawings, Kim, if you can. I'll try to be as brief as I can.
I'm sorry, but what property? No, it's going to be there.
What is this, 22?
That's the old one. It's 20.
Oh, sorry, wrong thing. Hold on.
Yeah, this.
I'm sorry.
You see that?
I'm not seeing.
Are you able to share that, Kim?
2325 Warner. Yeah, so it's right on the pond. It's a 2-family that has an extension towards the back that's 2 stories, and it has it has a dormer in the roof on the side, tucked in behind the main building. And instead of a dormer, they want to have sort of the whole roof now, so as on that dormer level.
Correct.
So it makes the architecture a little bit simpler, but just by, when you have the dormer and you lift up that roof, all of a sudden that becomes now square footage. And I think it was a total of 25 square foot or 25 in each of the units?
25 in each of the units, Theo.
25 square foot in each of the units. So the foundation doesn't change. It's just the roof line changes a bit. And it's tucked behind the main building. And it makes the elevation definitely simpler, you know, less interesting. But it's still a good elevation, I think. And it's not visible from the street. And Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Abutters, we had some information from Abutters that they were okay with it?
Yes, the applicant submitted two letters from either side of Butter this afternoon and yesterday. So
Okay.
Kim has them there, I believe, as well.
Okay. I haven't seen them yet, but, so let's,
Just grab this thing.
So the abutters had no issue with it, but they saw the
yeah,
existing
no,
framing, that
yeah,
was framed, that it's fine.
Kim is trying to get you up.
Are we still being recorded?
Yeah, it should still be, and it's still be.
This was before the board went?
Paul, when was this before the board?
May of 22, before your time, Elizabeth.
No, it's coming up now because there were schematic plans that and then once the building permit, you know, once the plans got further developed, applicant also switched architects, but you know, it's simpler, cheaper, obviously, and it just makes more sense because even the just having the slope in you know, having a dormer in your roof and having that as a straight line makes a big difference, right? You don't bump your head.
We did something like this recently on Central Street, I think. They were gonna reline that roof and bring it
Yeah.
straight.
Yeah.
Okay, Paul, I'm all set.
So that's good.
So
can you get to
the orange shaded areas, Theo, is what increased with this new framing. This was the proposed, and the orange areas are on either side of the dormers. So when the new roof is created, that's the floor area that was increased. Increase the gross floor area by 50 square feet, 25 on each side, right and left as you're looking at it.
So that's it. Can you show the elevation, Kim? Can you say more?
Can you show A4? Yeah. Yeah.
So you can see, I'll point this out actually.
Yeah.
So it's these things here, right? So it's actually, this is the rear elevation, and this is the dormer that sits in here, and they just want to now go straight up over the whole roof, so that this piece on both sides is gone.
Looks like a good idea.
And it makes, you know, as you can see, so actually this is the side facing, right? So
I love it.
So this, and this was, no, actually, yeah, this gets filled in. This line is now, because that goes straight, right, goes from that point in the straight line to that.
Theo, it's Elizabeth. We can't hear you.
Okay. Yeah.
I would have been on time, but
We just need.
Oh, you did that? Well, I came here for the no-go, but I had to come all the way.
So, sorry, Elizabeth. I was just pointing out at the screen sort of what the line was that the new roof line pretty much. So and then pointing to the two areas that are going to be filled in, and that will then cause the increase in square footage that we had approved. So
correct.
Okay.
That's it. Any discussion on the board?
No, I remember this project. I'm totally fine with this.
I'm comfortable with it.
I like it.
All right, motion, do we need a motion? Elizabeth, do we need a motion?
Yes, the board should move to grant an administrative approval for the alterations to the project to add 50 square feet through the removal of the dormer, and find that it is not a substantial alteration to the previous approved project.
I so move with that finding.
Good job. Just trying to remember all of them.
Do I get a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Good.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, guys. Yep, thank you.